Good morning. Happy Saturday, March 9th. We're just going to jump right into today's weather spotlight, and it is the severe weather in the southeast into the Carolinas. So here is your slight risk for severe storms today, and they're already happening. We're talking from northern Florida through southeastern Georgia into South Carolina and North Carolina. And yes, that does include a threat for tornadoes, pretty much the same area, 5% chance. And around that in the green, a 2% chance gets further into North Carolina and further south into Florida. But definitely something to watch today. That threat for severe weather, heavy rain as well, as we see in our watches and warnings this morning. We already have flood warnings going on in parts of Georgia, Alabama. We have a tornado watch in effect for northern Florida into southeastern Georgia, including a severe thunderstorm warning. Now, this is this morning at 8:28 Eastern Time. So that's the timestamp on this map. We also see a flood watch in effect for parts of South Carolina into North Carolina. Wind along the Appalachians right into New England. We're looking at winter weather advisories for parts of Pennsylvania, a little bit of West Virginia and Maryland. That turns into winter storm watches off of the lakes in New York State. Further north, winter storm warnings for northern New York into Vermont, and winter weather advisories and winter storm watches, I should say, for New Hampshire into Maine. Also with a flood watch in effect for places like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, you're part of that. It looks like parts of Maryland as well, and also the coastal areas of New Hampshire into Maine. So I don't know if New Hampshire has a coast, but real close to the coast there where New Hampshire and Massachusetts meet, and further north into Massachusetts and along the coast of Maine, some flood watches. And we see some river flooding problems too across the southeast into South Carolina and also in Virginia and also Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. And then you get onto the west coast, we're looking at some wind for southern Oregon, northern California. Winter weather advisories, Northern California, also winter storm watches there for parts of the Sierra Nevada. Way up north into Washington State, looks like a winter storm watch there. Winter weather advisory, we'll go with that. Those colors are really close. All right, so that's what's going on today, a lot. Especially for the southeast, that's where you really want to be on the lookout. Dew points today in the mid to upper 60s in that area with the very heavy rainfall, the flooding concerns, and the chance for some spin-ups and some severe thunderstorm gusts as well. And as we see on the surface map, a cold front is approaching that area. We have the very warm, soupy air. So flooding is a concern, severe thunderstorms a concern, isolated tornadoes a concern. General thunderstorms for the rest of Florida, parts of the south into northern Louisiana, and up the coast, up the east coast. So all the way up into New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York City, Massachusetts could see thunderstorms. North of that, freezing rain possible, heavy snow possible. New York State, New Hampshire, Vermont, into Maine. And it's a mix of rain and snow for the Ohio Valley into Pennsylvania, up into Michigan, the UP of Michigan, just your regular snow. And then for the east coast, or the west coast, I should say, our new storm moving on shore with thunderstorms for the Oregon and Washington coast, a mix of rain and snow inland with some heavy snow possible for parts of Washington, and then an area of eastern Washington with a pocket of just regular rain. And then your mixture goes into Northern California, a small area of heavy snow possible, Northern California, and a little bit of rain as well. Highs today, not vary for most of the country, as that cold front has moved through the middle of the country, now pressing south and east. Now to the south and east of the front is where we see the warm temperatures, 80s Florida, 70s for say Georgia, South Carolina, the coastal areas of North Carolina, and then temperatures start to fall off behind the front, but still pretty warm even in South Texas. Of course, southern Arizona, upper 70s to near 80. Very nice, as you would expect this time of year. Southern California as well. Even the central valleys of California in the 60s. But temperatures cool off again as you head north, as you would expect, with still some areas below freezing for highs in North Dakota, Minnesota, parts of the UP of Michigan, and Wisconsin. And then check out the highs tomorrow. We see a nice rebound in the middle of the country as a southerly flow will return and warm temperatures will go right up the plains, excuse me, almost to the Canadian border. Even the below freezing highs today in North Dakota will be in the 40s tomorrow, 50s, South Dakota 60s, into Nebraska and parts of Iowa, and 60s and 70s, well, 60s for Kansas and Oklahoma. And cooler as you get further south into Texas, as that front continues to make progress. That would be the same for the southeast. Temperatures today in the 70s, 60s tomorrow. And for the west, cooling off a little bit with that new system coming in with that surface tomorrow. We see our snow now in the Ohio Valley, West Virginia, mountains in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, heavy snow along the lakes and in northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. And it's a mix for the bigger cities like New York City. And then on the West Coast, our storms still moving in. Thunderstorms along the coast of California, or Oregon and Washington. Heavy snow, northern California, pockets of Washington, northern Idaho, and it's a mix in the lower elevations. And then Monday, the storm all but clears the East Coast. Still some lingering snows, northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, into Maine. Excuse me again. And then the Pacific Northwest storm moving inland a little bit more, but still storms, thunderstorms, along the Oregon and Washington coast, which is kind of unusual. Heavy snow for parts of western Washington, regular snow as you get into Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado. All right, let's take a look at the European model, and this will get us through the weekend and through Monday, really. So here's what's happening right now. This is actually this morning, about an hour and a half ago. And we do see the heavy rainfall coming down in South Carolina into Georgia and also the panhandle of Florida. Now, our severe thunderstorm warnings right in here with our flood warnings right in here. So this has not initialized perfectly, but pretty close. And so as we get to 9, 10 o'clock, we see the heavy rain moving into South Carolina, North Carolina, with some heavy rain also back into Florida. And again, our severe threat here with possible, large hail, damaging winds, and isolated tornadoes. It turns into regular rain as you head further to the north. Meanwhile, our storm moving in the Pacific Northwest with some rain along the Oregon and Washington coast. But you see the convection, the thunderstorms just offshore, and the heavy snow coming down Northern California. And then as we get further into this morning, we see thunderstorms continuing in our area of concern for severe weather, and some thunderstorms moving into Virginia and West Virginia, moving into Maryland. Not expecting severe weather here, but wouldn't be surprised if there's some isolated severe possible. Certainly some heavy rain, and then regular rain for Pennsylvania. And then we see thunderstorms along the Oregon coast. This is noontime today for the center part of the country. Now we see these blue lines. This is the cold air that's coming in behind this low. So the Midwest today with a cold start after our snow. We ended up almost with an inch of sleet and snow yesterday. And school did end up getting canceled because the roads were just the timing of it, the roads were pretty slick. But anyway, so cold start this morning and that cold air coming in behind the low. We're going to see a big warm up in this area over the next couple of days, but this cold air is going to be moving east in behind this system. So noon today, still cold in the Midwest, thunderstorms continuing, and then for the West Coast, thunderstorms moving onshore. As we get into this afternoon and evening, we see our system in the east affecting New England now more with snow and freezing rain and some sleet and some thunderstorms and some heavy rain. So just depending on where you are, it's thunderstorms, heavy rain for parts of New Jersey into eastern Pennsylvania, for New York City, into Massachusetts and Connecticut and Rhode Island. But further to the north, it's a mixture of rain and snow and some heavy snow and maybe some freezing rain. And then behind the system, we're starting to see this cold air move in behind it, but just regular rain for this time stamp for West Virginia. We're looking at not quite midnight Central Time tonight. So as we get into, this is midnight Central, so 1 a.m. for the East Coast, just before you spring forward. Heavy rain coming down for New England, but then quickly changing over to freezing rain and snow further north in the Pacific Northwest, dealing with some rain moving onshore, western Washington, western Oregon. As we get into the day tomorrow morning, very windy, snow for northern New York off of the lakes, also for northern Vermont and New Hampshire into Maine, thunderstorms along the coast. So that's why there's that flood watch there for the coastal areas of Maine, and this cold air moving in behind. Meanwhile, during the day Sunday, we're going to see this bubble of warm air moving into the Midwest to replace the cold air that's moving east. So as we get into the day Sunday, this is noon, and we're starting to see the warm air moving into Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and through the Central Plains, and then into the Midwest eventually. The cold air spilling into New England with some wind. So some snow off the lakes, Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, and some blowing around snow and wind chills with the cold air. But you do see the cold air moving east, the warm air moving in behind it, and our storm in the Pacific Northwest kind of unsettled, thunderstorms along the coast, heavy snow in Northern California, and scattered snow showers inland Idaho into Montana. And then as we get further into the day, so this is midnight Sunday night Central Time, or actually with the time change 1 a.m. Central Time. And then we see light snow continuing in New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, parts of Connecticut and Massachusetts. Still windy, still cold, but the warm air coming into the Midwest with unsettled weather still for the west, scattered snow showers, rain along the coast. And as we get into the day Monday, it's windy, it's cold for New England with some light snow showers, warm air moving into the center of the country, a little bit of lingering snow showers for the west, rain along the coast, a little bit further into Monday before the European model runs out. Still cold and windy for the east. Our storm, another storm, and some winds here too with the rain moving onshore, Oregon and Washington, some light snow inland. So that's the look this weekend. And really, we're looking at the severe weather possibilities today: Georgia, Florida, South Carolina into North Carolina, flooding possible, damaging winds possible, large hail possible, isolated tornadoes possible. And then as that system moves along the coast, it turns into just a mess for New England. Heavy rain, snow, freezing rain, probably some sleet thrown in, and cold air spilling in behind the system with wind and just cold wind chills. So that's what's going on. East Coast is kind of the mess. West Coast, new system moving in. The biggest headline there, thunderstorms for Western Oregon, Western Washington. Like I said, that's not a usual occurrence. All right, what's going to happen for the week after? So we're talking March 16th through the 22nd. Here are the trends. Wetter than average, a pretty good bet along the south and east. And then drier than average center and west. And then for precipitation, actually that was precipitation. And then for temperatures, cooler than average for the Midwest, Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, and south. And for Texas, especially south. And then warmer than average, say the western half of the country, sans Texas, and then warmer than average for northern New England, or New England, I should say. All right. That's a quick look at a morning look at your weather on the Weather Mic. Really appreciate you tuning in. And we will talk to you tomorrow afternoon, looks like. Lord willing and the creek don't rise. Have a great day.